As someone who had to figure out the pre-med and med school process for himself without any medical professionals in the family, I understand how overwhelming it can all seem. But fear not. In this video, we'll cover a big picture overview that simplifies the entire process. In the subsequent sections of this course, we'll dive into each part in far greater detail. Think of this as the 30,000-foot view. There is one primary milestone we are concerned about. When do you get accepted to medical school? Several months prior to that, you'll be submitting your medical school application. The bulk of this course will be preparing you for that moment, the time at which you submit your medical school application. The time between, beginning a couple months before you apply and until you get accepted, is when you'll be working incredibly hard on your application. Let's break it down further. Starting with the basics, we have the medical school prerequisite courses. These are the classes that all students are required to take before they will even be considered by medical schools. The standard prerequisites include 1 year of biology with lab, 1 year of general chemistry with lab, 1 year of organic chemistry with lab, 1 year of physics with lab, and at least 1 semester of math. For math, some schools require calculus and others require statistics. We recommend you pursue both, and particularly biostatistics for your stats requirement, as this will serve you well in the future for research, for understanding scientific studies, and for being an effective healthcare professional. Most schools also require English or a writing intensive course, biochemistry, and psychology or sociology. You'll complete most of these courses in the first 2 years of college. These are introductory level courses, also called your lower division coursework. In comparison, graduate level or upper division courses comprise the bulk of your 3rd and 4th years in college. These will be the courses that are more specific to your chosen major. After taking the prerequisites, you'll want to take the MCAT. Deciding on when to take the MCAT is a very important decision and requires balancing a few factors. If you take the MCAT without having completed most of the prerequisites, you'll likely end up with a weaker score. But wait too long after taking the prerequisites and you will slowly begin forgetting important information from your prereqs. The optimal time to take the MCAT will depend on when you are planning to apply to medical school. If you plan on going straight through, meaning you graduate in the summer and start medical school in the fall of the same calendar year, then you'll need to apply to medical school at the end of your junior year. In this case, I recommend you take your MCAT during the summer between your sophomore and junior year, although it's also not uncommon to take the test during your junior year on a lighter quarter or semester. If you're planning on taking a year off, meaning you apply at the end of your senior year, then you have time to spread out your prerequisite courses and make sure you have taken all of them prior to taking the MCAT. In this instance, I recommend taking the MCAT during the summer between your junior and senior years. You can find templates of each path in the download section of this course. Students tend to approach extracurriculars with a checklist mentality. You need to get X number of hours of shadowing and Y number of hours of clinical volunteering. We don't subscribe to that. There are a few domains you should prioritize and need to meet, but there is plenty of room for overlap. For example, while at UCLA, I was on the student stroke team whereby I volunteered in the emergency department and enrolled eligible stroke patients into a clinical study. This allowed me to shadow neurologists who were on the stroke team. It allowed me to get patient exposure, where I was interacting with them directly, and it allowed me to get involved on the front lines of clinical research. Clearly, this activity was very high yield as it addressed multiple components of a medical school application. But even more important, it was something that I was genuinely interested in as I was obsessed with the brain and how it functions. Remember, I was a neuroscience major and loved everything that had to do with the brain. It was a pretty involved experience, and if I wasn't actually genuinely interested in it, it would have been like pulling teeth. The traditional extracurricular domains that you should have some exposure to are the following: community and volunteer service, physician shadowing, patient exposure, leadership, and research. This is not an exhaustive list, and this does not mean you shouldn't spend time doing other things. When I was in college, I was on a competitive co-ed dance team for all 4 years. We traveled around the US and Canada competing in competitions. It was something I enjoyed, it developed my leadership and skills and teamwork, and it was a very unique aspect of my application that interviewers loved to talk about. It made me memorable. I also taught myself graphic design and was part of 2 separate organizations where I was able to demonstrate self-directed learning, initiative, and being detail-oriented. That last one, being detail-oriented, is very important if you want to go into something surgical. These are 2 activities I was interested in, and because there was an inherent pleasure in doing them, I excelled at them. It's much better to excel at something seemingly unrelated to medical school than to go through the motions of what you think the medical school admissions committee wants to see. They actually want to see your personality and unique gifts. Plus, when you excel at these seemingly unrelated pursuits, you can actually tie them back to medicine, as they will likely help you further develop your skills and competencies. We'll be talking about extracurriculars more in depth in the freshman year section of the course. When you decide to apply to medical school dictates when you start medical school. The two most common paths are the following. First, going straight through from college to medical school without taking any time off. You graduate from college in the summer and start medical school in the fall. This is what I did. Second, taking a year off. This means you would apply to medical school right around the time you were graduating from college. You would begin medical school in the fall of the subsequent calendar year. This is also a very common option. The medical school application timeline follows a predictable progression every calendar year. Every year, applications are open for submission around June 1st. You can actually start filling out the application sometime in May, but can only hit submit around June 1st, plus or minus a couple days. This is called the primary application and includes elements such as biographical information, your transcript, personal statement, and your work and activities. The work and activity section is kind of like a CV, but you elaborate a bit more on the various extracurriculars that you've done. AMCAS is the main application you'll turn to, as this is for applying to United States MD schools. AA COMAS is the application for United States DO medical schools, and TMD SAS is the application for Texas medical schools. They each have slightly different nuances, which we'll get to later in the course. From July through September, you'll receive secondary applications from schools. These are additional essays that are custom and unique to each program. Not all programs require secondaries, but most do. From August through winter, medical schools will offer interviews. Decisions of acceptance, waitlist, or rejection usually follow a few weeks after an interview. If you're lucky enough to have multiple acceptances, then you'll need to commit to one program by around April. If this all seems confusing, don't worry. This is just the big picture overview. We'll go into each stage in much greater detail soon.